The Consulting Success podcast is powered by the Clarity Coaching Program. If you'd like to work directly with the Consulting Success team and receive personal coaching and support to optimize and grow your consulting business, marketing, and revenue, visit consultingsuccess.com to find out more and apply.
Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the world of elite consultants, where you'll learn the strategies, tactics, and mindset to grow a highly profitable and successful consulting business.
Welcome back to another episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. Today, Michael is joined by Jamie Douraghy, who is an executive coach, facilitator, speaker, author, and U.S. national fencing champion. He specializes in providing executive coaching, leadership development, and team building services. But before we dive into the episode, it's worth noting that Jamie attributes a significant portion of his business accomplishments to his community involvement through EO and to his business coach. Now, if you're a consultant with the ambition to leap from 6 to 7 figures in your business, remember that you don't need to take this journey alone. We're here to help you. We're offering a free consulting blueprint designed to pave your way from 6 to 7 figures. To claim your free copy of this blueprint today, head over to consultingsuccess.com/guide. Again, that is consultingsuccess.com/guide. Now, let's shed some more light on Jamie. As an executive coach, Jamie facilitates entrepreneurs in achieving clarity by navigating the delicate balance between work and life. Now, as you tune into today's episode, you'll uncover a wealth of inspiring lessons. You'll learn about the significance of aligning with those who share similar values, how your hobbies can unexpectedly fuel your business growth, and a mindset trick designed to bolster your confidence. However, I particularly want you to focus on the pivotal role of having a supportive community and coach to rely on. This could be the secret sauce for you in the expansion of your consulting practice. Here to share his compelling journey with you is Jamie Douraghy. Enjoy the episode.
Yeah, so Jamie, I'm excited for our conversation for several reasons. As we spoke about before hitting record, I think the work that you do is fascinating. It's a topic that every business owner has to deal with or struggles with or likely spends time kind of pondering. But you are an executive coach, you're a facilitator, you're a speaker, you're an author. You're also a U.S. national fencing champion. And as you shared with me before, you are based in the U.S., born in the U.S., but you spent your early years living in Tehran, Iran, and also time in England, which for people who have been in the consulting success community for some time, they know how much we love and thrive off of, just international perspectives, and just the world is such a wonderful place. So I'd love to dive more into that. You do executive coaching, leadership development, team building for your clients. And so why don't we start off with your experience as being in the world of fencing? First of all, how did you get into fencing? And I'd love to hear kind of what you took from that, or what maybe still stays with you today from that experience of being in kind of a U.S. national fencing.
Absolutely. For me, fencing started when I was actually in a boarding school in England, and the options, and if you can imagine the weather in England in January, we had the sport called field hockey, and we would be out there outside of London in the mud, rain. And it was really more like a weekly scene out of Braveheart. Right. Just a bunch of young men going at it with sticks trying to hit a white ball, which really wasn't the target sometimes. And there was an option to fence. And I thought, well, that's interesting. It's a different environment. And I'm small. I'm 5'6". I'm left-handed and fast. So I was starting to win without a lot of training. And that gave me confidence. And that gave me something to aim for. And the more I did it, like anything else in life, the more I did it, the better I got. The more lessons I took, the more I raised my game. The more competitions I entered, the better I started to place over time. And that was 47 years ago, and I'm still fencing. What I learned from fencing is I use that for a metaphor of how we handle pressure under life, how we handle pressure in life. And what I learned from that is when I surrounded myself with the better coaches, I got better results. When I raised my game and competed against fencers that were better than me, I would eventually beat them. At the same time, other fencers are aiming to beat me. So it's a constant game, just as in business. And you just when you think you're ahead, someone else comes and takes the lead, and then you have to go back again. What's kept me in it are two things. One is it's kept me in physical shape, in mental shape as well. And the other is the fencing community now. And so I mentor younger fencers. I spend some of my time helping them build, not from the coaching standpoint, because they're much better coaches, fencing coaches than I am. I work on their mindset. I work on their confidence to help them build the internal muscle, if you will, to help them become better competitors. So that's, in a nutshell, been a 47-year journey through the sport.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that, because I think there's a lot inside of that that is relevant to probably everybody in one form or another. And there's two big things that kind of stood out to me inside of that. The first is you talked about confidence, and that I wonder, your perspective on how important is it for people to find in whatever it is that they're working on or doing a quick win or an easy win to build their confidence. Because so often these days, especially with media around us, it's like this big initiative or this big project or to that next level of growth. And people are always kind of thinking about big things they need to move to create big results. But I wonder, your thoughts on how important, if at all, in your experience, for people to actually maybe look at that bigger initiative or goal and actually break it down to figure out, well, what is just one small maybe win or quick win that I could have that would then give me that confidence, and that would then propel me to keep moving forward. What are your thoughts on that?
100% agree. I mean, that is exactly what fencing is all about. We have lost far more tournaments than we've ever won in our life. And we win the tournaments through incremental steps, you can only score one touch at a time, generally. And that's how it works. And you have to take small steps. If we take too big a step in fencing, we actually open up ourselves, because we're telling our opponent, hey, I'm coming at you. If we're taking smaller steps, they can't always read our body language. I learned, and fencing has a ranking system from unclassified E through A being the highest from a letter standpoint. And every 3 years, you have to re-earn that letter, or you drop down to the B and you drop down to the C. So it's about constantly staying engaged, having a process, understanding that these processes are small steps to the top of the podium. Sometimes you're at the lower step, the second place, third step. Sometimes you don't even make the podium. However, for me, the joy and the challenge is beating myself, being better than I was the last time, because my opponent is doing the same thing.
Yeah. As you're speaking, I'm just thinking about all of the applications of this to entrepreneurs, because so much of what you talk about right now is like the success comes from consistency. And it comes from consistently taking small steps. So I think for everybody who's joining us right now, it's just so important to look at what are you doing right now? And rather than looking at one big, massive goal, like you want to increase your revenue by X amount or whatever it is, just think about, well, how can you actually break that down? What is one small step that you can take today and this week that would be a win for you, and the confidence from that and the progress that you're going to make from that, that's just going to start to compound. The other thing that you talked about was coaches. And I'm a very big believer in this as well. From over a decade back, I started working with coaches myself and for us in our business. And I find it interesting that there's so many people who still resist the idea of working with a coach or working with somebody who's kind of been there and done that, who's achieved what they want to achieve or has a way to help them to accelerate the results they want to see. And from your work with so many people, both in the sports world as well as kind of in the business or corporate work kind of world, why do you believe that happens? What do you think is holding people back from accepting or being open to getting coaching, getting help to accelerate their success or the progress they want to make?
Part of it could be just how we internalize and we label certain professions. If we look at it, our attorneys are our coaches, our accountants are our coaches. There are so many, they coach us in different ways. Why not have one that sees beyond the transaction or the subject matter expertise of some of the professionals that we surround ourselves with? And if we look at the top athletes, they have far more than one coach. They have multiple coaches to work on different aspects, not only of their game, also of their mind, of their body, and maybe even of their spirit. And for me, those four elements require outside perspective. More than reading a book, more than listening to a podcast. I felt that when I had a coach, I had accountability to someone other than myself. And I didn't want to let the coach down.
Have you ever found somebody who has achieved and excelled in work or in sport that has not had a coach? Is that even a possibility? Because I would be hard pressed to find somebody who has really achieved success or just, made real progress in their own eyes and in the eyes of those around them without a coach?
From a personal experience, I can say, no, I don't. From what I've read, everyone says that these are the other people. Every time someone writes a great book, the list of acknowledgments of people that have helped them along the way is, for me, as important as to why they wrote that book. It doesn't happen on its own.
I think that's a great point that, so much of what we all achieve or want to achieve, certainly we can accelerate that or make more progress by surrounding ourselves with people that can help us to get there. Let's dig in a little bit more into kind of how you got to where you are. Before you started coaching and facilitating workshops and doing the work that you do right now with your clients, what were you doing? Kind of get us up to speed on the background of Jamie before the current stage.
Absolutely. Well, before I found what I was supposed to be doing, I had a lot of odd jobs. I was somewhat directionless. And then eventually my brother invited me to start a company by the name of Artisan. It's a staffing company for freelance creative talent. And we ran that for about 20 years. I joined EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization, and the business grew and thrived. However, inside, I felt I had something else to do. That feeling for me was sort of the North Star, if you will. It was the why. And then I had listened to Simon Sinek. He had spoke about Start With Why. He'd started that part, which was great. I kept researching. And then I came across a gentleman by the name of Gary Sanchez and the Why Institute. And he created the 9 Whys. And that framework gave me something tangible to work with. And when I found that my why was to contribute to something greater than myself, then I had to dig a little deeper. So the why is important. Then what is the how? How do I do this? My how is to make sense of the complicated. And then what I do is create clarity so that the leaders that I work with can go on and make the important decisions and live in life with greater impact. So I found my why, how, and what. From there, I felt that I had to do more work. So I looked at different kinds of assessments. I landed on Clifton Strengths. I became a certified coach in Clifton Strengths because Clifton Strengths focuses on the how. And then you take your top 5 strengths. I put those into the how bucket. And then I felt that I believe in the power of 3. So I went and did a little bit more research and came across the work of Judith Glaser and conversational intelligence. And her way of thinking is, how do we take our conversations as leaders from transactional and positional, where we spend a lot of times proving our case, and taking that to the 3rd level, which is transformational. So I believe when we know our why, and then we know how to do it through our strengths, we can start having higher level conversations that then lift whoever we're speaking with or presenting to that next level. When I came across that gave me the confidence. And as I was saying earlier, I don't believe in fake it till you make it. I believe in do it till you become it. And I gradually, through small incremental steps, kept doing it until I became that executive coach and facilitator where I spend my time in life right now doing that.
So I want to go back to that period where, you're building a growing company. So I would imagine that there's ups and downs like any business is going to have. Financially, guessing things were going quite well. Correct me if I'm wrong there. You have this feeling that there's something needs to change, right? Something's maybe missing, or you're not clear on the why, the purpose. But I think a lot of people have that feeling at one point, but they'll look at their business and go, well, I have a successful business. Things are going well here. Like, maybe this is just a normal thought. Maybe it's a distraction, and they'll kind of just get back to doing what they're always doing. So in your experience, when should somebody pay attention to that feeling or that question that comes maybe into their mind around their purpose? And should they keep doing what they're doing? Should they make a change? How do you kind of view that?
How I viewed it is I was showing up to work physically and I was not there mentally and spiritually. There's a feeling that's empty. And I would generally override that with my logic brain and said, that's okay. You've got a good business. You have responsibility to the staff, this and that. And then at the time, I was probably neglecting other aspects at home and neglecting aspects of my sport. It's actually my fencing started to go down as certain parts of my business. And we had tough times, 2001, 2008, 3 years ago. We've been through those cycles. And there is a certain amount of grit. There's also a time to know when to walk away and to open up other doors that may have been closed because we were so hyper-focused on the success of the business. And so I think that sort of sum it up in a way.
I think that's helpful because I want to give people the perspective. I really kind of share through your story because, again, I do believe that those kinds of thoughts or feelings come up for people at different stages. And sometimes, as you said, the logic, or I think it's quite common, the logical kind of side just takes over and says, like, keep doing what you're doing. But it's an important question to ask. And there's no necessarily right or wrong in terms of everybody's situation is different. But I think that's helpful for people to explore. So you talk now about how you went from that place of feeling that something maybe needed to change, and then how you did research and you ended up developing these skills to help leaders, ultimately is kind of where you landed. How did you go about actually getting your first few clients once you kind of assembled some of these skills? You had some certification, like you had kind of the tools for your tool belt, and you had the desire, obviously. Where did it go from there in terms of actually getting first few clients?
My first few clients came through the community that I belonged with, which is the entrepreneurial community, and in part through EO. I found that I used to be very comfortable sitting in the audience and being in the side of the room. And eventually, from a leadership perspective, they had asked me to be chapter president. And then I gained a few other leadership roles along the way. So finally, I became comfortable at being in front of the room. And that in itself was its own journey. For me, I struggle personally promoting myself. It's not easy to sell myself. So I have partnered with others that do that for me. And over time, as long as one is consistent, most of my business now is word of mouth. That's just how I've been lucky.
Yeah, like the partners, again, a lot of people will resonate with this idea or this feeling of, I don't like to sell. I'm not a salesperson. I'm not a marketing person. I'm just, good at my craft and I have this expertise, but I'm not necessarily the promotional kind of person. You talked about partnering with others that helped you with that. Can you give an example or a little bit more detail of kind of, who were those people, or what was their function or role, and how did they help you with that?
The functions were really, they were agreed to be the rainmaker, as it were, and I would give them a percentage of the business, and willingly. And there are other business models that do that. There's Vistage. There are other groups where you are coaching and consulting that capacity, and they get a piece of the action because they're bringing the customers to you. That's largely where it had been, was partnering with others that believed that I could deliver and it would be a source of income.
Hey, it's Michael here, and we'll be right back to the podcast. But first, are you ready to grow, scale, and take your consulting business and marketing to the next level? If so, our Clarity Coaching program may be a great fit for you. You'll work with our experienced team to set up a strategic plan for your business and coach you step by step in areas like how to consistently attract more leads, develop a magnetic message that resonates with your ideal clients, strategically package and position your services, earn higher fees, win more proposals, and scale your business. To find out more about Clarity Coaching and apply, go to consultingsuccess.com and click on coaching.
For them as well. And I'm happy to share.
Were they individuals, or were they always organizations like an EO or a Vistage that did this for you?
It's a blend of both. I found myself, the more flexible I was, the more revenue I was able to generate through a variety of channels, all the while respecting the integrity of each organization and not soliciting within the organization. They would come to me. And then the other person, they would sell to the outside world apart from the worlds I was already involved with.
And through that process, is there anything that you found in terms of a lesson, like you worked with, one person or an organization and it really did not work well? Like there was some misalignment or some issues that crept up that, with the benefit of hindsight, you would not do, or you would look for, you'd stay away from? Anything there that you can share?
Speaking in general terms, where I found the misalignment was really on values, and not just the values, the interpretation of the value and the interpretation of what the word meant. Because we can say, oh, well, integrity or authenticity. Well, what does that truly mean? Give me a definition. And for me, authenticity is one of my core values. So it's authenticity in word and deed. And if I felt the person may have been authentic in their words and not in their deeds, then that created dissonance. And then from there, I realized that this could not be a long-term partner.
I think that's a great example. So you're going beyond just saying the word or kind of saying like, here's kind of what the values are. You're making sure that the partners that you have or that you've worked with view and have kind of a shared understanding of what that value actually means and what maybe an example of it would be kind of playing out in the real world.
And live it.
Right.
Because we're in a relationship that's based on trust and respect. And if it's based simply on a transaction, that's okay. That's for a different kind of relationship. It's not the kind of relationship that I thrive off of.
Okay, that's helpful. So the next thing I want for us to kind of talk a little bit about and explore and have a conversation around is this idea that you talk about, like how to master the duel between life and work. And when I saw that on your website, it resonated with me. It's like, yeah, that's an interesting topic. So to start, Can you just define what does that mean to you? How to master the duel between life and work?
For me, mastery is there's no start and end point. It's ongoing. It's part of why I like fencing, because the opponent that I had last week is not the opponent I had this week. I am not the same person today as I was yesterday. So it's a continuous learning process. And then along the way, some people are very good at compartmentalizing. They say, well, I live my life like this, and I'm going to be like this at work, at life, and I'm going to be like this at work. And for me, it was about the integration of the two. And I didn't have to play this game. I could be my authentic self, both in life and in work, knowing that I had a different role to play at different times. At the same time, I still drew from my core values and know and learn and seek to understand how do others wish to be treated, not how do I wish to be treated, how do they wish to be treated. And that, as long as I stayed true to my values, it didn't matter if I was in a work environment or in a life environment. I was able to be my authentic self in both scenarios.
I think it'd be helpful if you're able to maybe share an example of, is there a common situation that you've seen with leaders where they are trying to kind of find this balance between work and life, right? I mean, people talk about the work-life balance. Some say there's no such thing, it doesn't exist. Others say, yeah, no, it's a very critical thing to focus on. But what have you seen kind of come up with the leaders that you work with? Is there kind of just a very common kind of situation or example that you could use just to illustrate a common challenge, and then maybe how you help people to navigate through that?
Very good question. How I look at it, it's what is my capacity as a leader? What is my capacity within me for life? Because life comes before work. Work is an aspect of our life, as is play, as is rest, as is learning. If I can increase my capacity, and that is emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and physically, if I can work on all those aspects together, I probably have more equilibrium within myself. And then I can tackle those aspects. A good example would be 2008. Our business is crashing along with many others because we support marketing and advertising departments. That's usually the first thing that gets cut. Money's no longer there. We hunker down. So we saw our businesses going down. We had to make tough choices. I had to make cutbacks on other areas at the same time. I still went fencing every week because that kept me focused. It kept me, couldn't buy new shoes. I had to wear shoes that were running out. That didn't happen. I'm using that again metaphorically, but the idea was to keep showing up, to keep going to practice, to keep taking the lessons. And I applied that same mindset to work. Keep showing up, keep bringing that strength, keep having that inner strength, and making sure that the rest of the world felt that, even though inside I was scared.
So, I mean, as you're speaking right now, I can't help but think that that's an area that so many people have a real challenge with. So, you look at, as somebody becomes more successful, their business becomes bigger, they have maybe more people or just more demand for their services and for their expertise. One of the first things that tends to fall off is them taking care of themselves, right? They don't exercise, they don't eat well, they don't whatever, fill in the blank. And I wondered, is that like, have you seen a correlation between that leading to this place of overwhelm where people are so busy because they're kind of busy becoming successful on the business or work side, but what tends to drop off as they're kind of climbing that mountain of success are the other aspects of their life in terms of, the balance of whether it's spiritual or relationships or, their own kind of physical and mental health. What are your thoughts, and what have you seen with leaders that you've worked with in that kind of area or in that respect?
The ones that have pushed through from that period are the ones who have community. They're the ones who have a forum. They're the ones who may have a coach. They're ones who have a group of like-minded individuals that can help push through together. For example, we could be facing this wall, and that wall may feel insurmountable. Well, we can jump over it, we can take it down brick by brick, or we can smash right into it. And I've seen all of those happen. And as the saying goes, many hands lighten the load. And so if we can take that apart brick by brick through the help of others, then we don't have to leap as hard. We're not going to crash into it, and we can just walk through that. It does take others. For us to feel that we can do it all by ourselves it's erroneous in terms of that way of thinking that we can do it all by ourselves.
And how important in your mind is it, though, like with your example of, even as you were going through this very challenging time in 2008, the thing that probably kept you going and, allowed you like not to give up or to just build back up it seems like playing fencing, right? And going for that consistently was really critical. I mean, I guess your thoughts on that in terms of others who are going through some challenging situation, and maybe it's not even a challenge, maybe it's growing and like things are going really well for them on the business side, but they're not being consistent in the other areas of life that ultimately would probably make them a happier, more well-rounded person. What's your perspective on that?
Completely agree. And in addition to that, I was actually the EO Los Angeles chapter president in 2008, 2009, right when everyone's hair was on fire. And we as the board made that commitment to ourselves, to the chapter, that we would help lift the entire, to the extent that we could, the entrepreneurial community within Los Angeles. And we started opening up and reaching out to the community. For me, that gave me more of a sense of connection and commitment. It was not convenient. However, by digging deeper and knowing that there were others next to me, that community of entrepreneurs, the EO chapter at that time, we really did push through a lot together. And then fencing was my constant, that I could go there, because once you enter that fencing club, it doesn't matter what's going on outside. The person opposite you with a mask on and a weapon in their hand doesn't care how bad a day you had. If I let that day get the better of me, then I will lose in that moment and I'll get hit. And I don't like getting hit.
Right, exactly. Yeah, no, I think your point around community, I mean, we're definitely seeing this with so many of our clients that now maybe more than ever before, or just like in these times, community is so important. And there's so much focus on things like AI and technology. And like, these are all great developments that hopefully are going to continue to help kind of, humankind. But at the same time, I think the one thing that, as an example, AI doesn't replace or can't really impact is relationships, or the value of relationships and community. And so I agree with you. It's so important to find a community that you resonate with and that you're not alone. Collectively, you can accomplish so much more together. I wonder as well, and Jamie, your thoughts around this, again, this thinking about this concept of mastering life and work, or the duel between life and work. And what are some of the mistakes, like the common mistakes that you see people making if they're looking to build a business, they're looking to become more successful? And so for the consultants that are in our world and tuning into this right now, they're likely going through all kinds of different things as they're working to build their businesses. What are maybe some common mistakes or kind of landmines that you could share with us for people so that help them to avoid those, or just to recognize they might be going through one right now?
One of the mistakes I made was when people would say no, that I would take that rejection personally, that they were saying no to me and my talents and all the hard work and all this work that I've been doing. And I realized that wasn't it. It just may have been timing, or that my offering wasn't right for them. That's fine. And not to take it as a defeat. It's to take it, or as failure for that matter. And it's to take it, what did I learn from this? What can I tighten up? I'll call them later and say, hey, we didn't end up working together. Is there something that I could do better? What can I learn from this? For me, also, it's a commitment. So I realized that if I didn't get this one, there's probably 10 others that are out there. And persistence is important. At the same time, knowing and understanding the value that I bring. Because I feel that when I've made the connection with an executive or with their leadership team, and I'm seeing them start to nod, I see their eyes get bigger, I see them starting to physically lean in, that what I'm sharing and is having an impact in that moment. And those are the moments that I live for, because that gives me that energy. That's what energizes me. And I realize after that, okay, I can do this more. I made a conscious choice not to scale because I had already run a company. Many people said, well, Jamie, you should do this and hire coaches and build a business. And I said, no, I want to build the lives of leaders. I'm very happy and I'm focused with doing that. It does mean a different level of income, and I'm fine with that because I have a sense of fulfillment at this stage of my life with the work that I do.
Yeah. I mean, I love that you're so kind of intentional and conscious with where you want to take things, and knowing, because you've had that experience before, that you could accomplish a lot more. I say that like in quotation marks for those that can't see the video, because that's, again, more is whatever you want it to mean for you. You talked about kind of recognizing your own value, and we've seen people struggle with that at different stages. Some who have already been in business for quite some period of time, but they've just gone along kind of doing things in a way that feels comfortable to them. So they're just used to viewing what's in front of them in that same way. And what I mean by that is that you can still be relatively successful, but not necessarily view the value that you bring to its full potential. And that tends to hold people back. So I'm wondering with your journey of recognizing, how did you I guess the question is, how did you go about recognizing your own value and then really, just kind of go from a place where maybe previously you didn't recognize it to the level and the extent that it could be, to all of a sudden through that journey, finding that you were actually able to really achieve or create greater value. What did that look like for you?
It was exactly what I struggled with. I didn't know how to price myself. And do I go too low? Do I do too high? So I went somewhere in the middle, played it safe. And the feedback that I got from many is like, you're not charging enough for the value that you're bringing. And I would ask them, well, how much we pay this? Well, X. And I said, okay, then next time it's X. And then I stayed at that level. I went up to that level, I should say. And as I saw the value that I was bringing based on feedback, based on 360 feedback, what worked and what could be better, my prices went up and others were willing to pay for it based on what they had heard of the success from the leaders post-workshop or post-coaching. And another answer to that is, how much is it costing you by not doing this work? And when they see the exponential dollars and how many commas or decimal points we wish to put on that, then the investment in the right kind of coaching and facilitation is an exponential reward for having invested in oneself through an outside perspective.
How do you view value and pricing from the context or the situation of that some of the leaders that you're working with? I would imagine the work that you're doing with them may not be 100% focused on, let's say, increasing revenues or sales, or it's maybe not something that's as tangible as that you can kind of connect a dollar sign to. Because consultants struggle with that. They understand the concept of value pricing and how beneficial it can be to kind of base your fees and pricing on the value or the outcomes of the results that you're creating. But for those where the work maybe isn't a direct connection to like increasing sales or decreasing costs or improving profits, how do you kind of look at that, and how does that impact your approach to fees and pricing?
I generally start with, what is the cost of a team that's operating in dissonance? And let's look at that number. That number generally does come from the CEO, the leader. They probably have a finger on the pulse of what that costs them.
And sorry to interrupt, Jamie, what would that look like? What would they consider, come up with an answer to that? Are they looking at the salaries of their team and how many team members, and how much more they could be improved or more effective beyond where they are right now? Or what are some of the kind of the metrics, the components that go into that?
Yes, they'll look at salaries. They'll also look at opportunity cost and the length of time that it may take to get to a decision, or the length of time that it took to get to a bad decision. And it's a little hard sometimes. It's gray. And once you have the numbers in place, for me, it's really about it. It's an EQ decision over an IQ decision. It is what, as a leader, giving the team what they need. If all I'm giving them is numbers and we're all performance by numbers, fine. If that's the kind of leadership that they want. The companies that I work with are not the Fortune 500. They are really in the $5 to $50 million space, which is where the entrepreneur lives, which is my area of expertise. And so the conversations to be had one-on-one with the leaders is much more on a personal level, because there's a lot of ownership, let's say, at the level of the companies that I tend to work with. So it is a bit of a gray area, and it does become a gut check at some point.
Have you found yourself in situations where you ask those questions, or it's part of the conversation with the buyer, with the client, and they're not sure? They don't know how to maybe articulate what that value is or what that dollar amount is. And if so, how do you proceed, or how do you kind of work through that with them?
If they don't know, I ask them to partner up with their numbers person. So go to your CFO, have a one-on-one, sit down with the other, or if there's three of you, sit down, triangulate, come up with an idea, and then come back to me. So this also gives the CEO an opportunity to check in with other leaders that, hey, I'm thinking about this. What do you see that I'm not seeing? And they may say, yeah, go bring this outside person in. Or they may say, no, we're not ready. We've got to protect our cash. Then the CEO has to make a decision.
When you do that, it sounds like you're kind of giving a bit of homework to the CEO in that situation. Some people might look at that and from a sales perspective or kind of sales process perspective and be a little bit concerned that, you're not really sealing the deal, or you're not really bringing them in because, even before you talk about pricing or whatever it might be, you're having that kind of conversation, you're collecting some information. You don't strike me as the kind of person that is pushing hard for somebody to make a decision, right away. And I might be wrong on that, so correct me, please. But I'm just wondering, how do you think about that in terms of giving somebody the space or pulling somebody along kind of a defined sales process? Where do you kind of live on that spectrum?
You're absolutely right. And it's probably an extension of my own personality. I don't like to be sold. I like to be guided. I like part of it. It's a preference, I should say. And everybody probably needs a coach in some capacity. I choose to work with those who really want it because they are more willing to do the hard work and the heavy lifting that the homework requires. And once they're ready, it's more likely that they will stay and follow it through to completion versus being a one and done kind of workshop, which are fine. If we're going back to being busy again, then we're not really achieving that life work integration. We're going back to the juggling act.
Are there certain signs or words or behaviors that you pick up on that tells you early in that kind of conversation or touch point with a prospective client where you can see from that this is somebody who's committed and they want this, as opposed to somebody who really isn't that committed and likely will not move forward?
In the moment, everyone's enthusiastic because it's exciting. It sounds like a good idea. They may like how I think and how I present. It's really in the follow-up work. I give every CEO a follow-up task to do. It's a 3-pager with a variety of questions and thoughts and thinking. And there's a good portion that just never fill them up and I never hear from them again. That's fine. If all they wanted was a 3-page worksheet and they got that from half an hour with me, good. That's great. I'm still contributing, right? Even in that capacity, I still feel fulfilled in a different way.
And just to provide a little bit more detail here and to go a little bit deeper for everybody. So what you're referring to is you might have a 30-minute conversation for free with a prospective client. As part, you have that 30 minutes. As afterwards, you'll give them, here's some homework for you. It's a 3-page kind of assessment, if you will. Fill it in, send it back, and then we can move forward to the next step. Is that correct?
Exactly. And I give them a deadline to fill it back, if not 30 days from now. Do this within a week and we'll have a follow-up conversation. If they don't, then I understand that their level of commitment is probably elsewhere.
Do you do any follow-up at all with those people, or do you just wait for them to?
I'll send a follow-up email. I said, hey, it's been a week. I haven't heard from you. If you wish, here's my calendar, book a time. And if not, good luck on your journey.
Yeah, I love that. And at that stage, buyers or prospective clients, do they know your pricing? Like, have you talked about what an engagement would look like, or has that not happened yet?
I do that within the first 30 minutes, that this is what the program looks like. So they have an idea of what they are committing to. That's upfront, and the associated costs are upfront as well.
And when you are having that conversation, are you only providing the assessment to those who say, okay, yeah, that sounds good, let's move forward? So are they initially telling you that they want to move forward, and that's why you're giving them the assessment? Or even if somebody hasn't yet kind of made that commitment or hasn't verbally said that to you, you're still going to give the assessment? What does that look like?
I'll still give them the assessment because I believe all of us need time to reflect on something as a leader. And I've had clients come back to me 90 days, 6 months later. I wasn't ready at the time. Thank you for this. I've been reflecting on this. Life has not gotten better in 6 months. It's time to engage.
Do you do any follow-up with people between the time that, you have that initial conversation, you give them the assessment, they don't respond for whether it's, 1 month, 9 months, whatever it might be? Do you have any kind of follow-up process to touch base with those people during that time?
I tend not to. I don't. There are many really good coaches, and I learn a lot from others that are on a consistent marketing plan. I'll get an email from them every 2 weeks with some very valuable content. For me, found that it's an exhausting process to be putting out content on an ongoing basis. And I'm probably best at learning from others and then sharing what I've learned in a different perspective with my actual paying clients. It's a very crowded space with a lot of brilliant people. And I just didn't want to be one more noise that they had. So yes, it does reduce some of my inbound inquiries. Same time, it's a intentional choice that I made.
I think that's great that you're so clear on that, because I would imagine if you had selected the path of growth, scale, you want to build this bigger, you want to significantly increase, revenues and so forth, that your choice around some of the how you handle the sales process or how you handle the marketing process would be quite different. But what you're doing now works for you with a specific model that you have.
Exactly. And to the point that you brought up earlier, there are so many different approaches to doing this, and each one is right for that person. Once they find it and commit to it, whatever angle that may be, whatever school of thought they're from, whatever marketing way of thinking and doing. They're all very valuable. Just have to make sure it works for you and it's in line with your values.
All right. So just a couple more questions here and then we'll wrap up. I often ask people about, a couple of habits that they do, on a consistent basis that they feel make an impact or have a very positive impact on their ability to show up and perform at a high level. I would imagine for you, one of them is fencing based on our conversation. Is there something else that you do consistently that you feel just really has a positive impact on your life and your business as well, Jamie?
Absolutely. I get up every morning at 5:00 now. It used to be 7. I've realized those extra 2 hours a day bring so much more, let's say, light into my world earlier on. And my wife and I go for a walk by 5:30, 5:36. We always go for a walk. It's pretty much 5 days a week that we're out doing the walk and we talk about our thoughts, our plans. So we get to share that. The other thing that's worked really well from a habit is ever since COVID, I have parents that are 88 and 90 years old. And every Sunday we have a family Zoom with our siblings and occasionally the grandchildren will show up, and ritualizing something, that connection, because we live in different parts of the world, brings us a lot of joy and fulfills a sense of connection and community with family. And so between fencing, which is all about me, so to speak, getting up early and walking with my wife is about the two of us. And then extending that to our family, it's about we as a family. Those are small things that help me truly live an integrated life. And so I'm not struggling to balance between life and work. I'm really trying my best to live them as one through those habits or rituals.
Those are great. I mean, the one about waking up at 5, I'm the same. And I do find in my case, it's going to the gym or going for a run in the morning. Just you can get so much more done. And I really feel it just sets the stage for having kind of setting up for a great day. So I love that. And then second to final question here, which is one book that you have either read or listened to in the last 6 months, could be fiction or nonfiction, but just something that, again, has had an impact, you feel like it would be helpful for others and that you would recommend.
I just finished Story Messenger by Neil deGrasse Tyson. And what I really appreciated is his perspective that he can talk in great deal about the cosmos and then show how small we are. And at the same time, how important we can be with the contributions that we make. So that really resonated with me. I forgot another habit that I do. I also journal on a daily basis. I do that as well. And so when I read Neil's book, I'll take extracts from his book and then keep that in a separate book. It's like, oh, wow, here's an aha moment. Here's another aha. So I try to capture aha moments from the various books I read. And the other one that I recommend that everyone read is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. That really gave me a perspective from what we can come through, regardless of, in his case, the terrible circumstances that he had to overcome, and still keep that positive mindset and learn from that experience. But life can teach us a lot.
Certainly. We will have both those linked up in the show notes. And finally, though, Jamie, I want to thank you for coming on here today, for sharing a bit of your journey and your experience. I know people can learn a lot more from following your work or seeing what you're doing. And so for those that want to learn more and stay tuned, where's the best place for them to go to learn more about you and your work?
I'm on LinkedIn under Jamie Douraghy, and also my website is jdouraghy, douraghy.com.
All right. We will have that linked up on the show notes at consultingsuccess.com. Jamie, again, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Michael. It's been a real pleasure having this conversation with you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. For more episodes and to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, head on over to iTunes. And if you'd like to develop consistent lead flow and a highly profitable consulting business, learn more about our coaching programs at consultingsuccess.com.